Hello, and welcome to the Millennial Nutritionist Podcast. I'm Isla Garcia, master's degree of nutrition science and registered dietitian, and I'm going to make weight loss realistic, sustainable, and uncomplicated for your busy lifestyle. On this podcast, me and my team of registered dietitians will decipher the latest nutrition research, dissect fad diets, and discuss social media trends for you so you can feel confident knowing what to eat to achieve your health goals. Research suggests that most weight loss programs aren't successful, but my experience has taught me that this is not because the participants aren't committed. It's because those diets are designed by non-nutrition professionals and center around severe restrictions. We are here to provide the facts about the science of weight loss so you can have the success you want and continue living your best life. Hey, it's Isla, your founder, CEO, and host of the Millennial Nutritionist Podcast. And I'm going to start pre-recording some intros because I think they sound a little bit better. And I always want to relate what we're talking about back to why it's important for health and overall weight loss. So our exercise episodes perform very well. So we're giving you what you want and including more. Today we have trainer and coach Tyler back on to talk about why you're not going to get bulky from strength training. When I tell clients to start strength training, they often are afraid they're just going to get bigger by adding a layer of muscle under a layer of fat. However, that's not necessarily how it works, and strength training can really be a game changer if you're not seeing progress in your weight loss journey. Also wanted to include this last topic to conclude our protein month over on Millennial Living because you can't increase your muscle mass if you're eating a low protein diet. So let's dive in and learn why strength training isn't going to make you bulky. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tyler. Our previous episode did really well, so I definitely want to have you back because I feel like you were really helpful in teaching a lot of concepts that I didn't even understand. So thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me again. I hope that people found some actionable takeaways, and I'm excited to talk about this one too.
How are things going? Any new foods or wellness habits? I know the last time you talked about the cow and I asked other people about it and they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. You can totally do that. Are you buying anything else these days that are fun?
Not really. This month has been a little crazy for my health and fitness. I went to Florida for the first week of April, and then last week, and I was in North Carolina for my brother's bachelor party. So kind of been all over, eating out a lot more than normal, not getting all my lifts in per week, but it's all good. I'm trying to cut down for the summer, get a little leaner. So that's kind of what I've been showing on my Instagram page, trying to just enjoy foods, enjoy time with friends and family, and not be super restrictive.
What do you do to cut? Because I tried to do the bulk cut thing one time and it was so hard for me to
Yeah.
switch over to automatically just start eating less. What is your tip when you do cut? Because that's hard.
I feel like I'm kind of in a minority group where I don't want to sound braggy or anything, but I'm pretty disciplined when it comes to this because I've done it for so long. But
Yeah.
I kind of have that on and off switch where if I know I'm cutting, I will just stop eating certain foods, or I will just hit my calorie goals no matter what. Like I focus on nutrient dense whole foods, minimal ingredients, and no processed foods. But obviously the first few weeks of April, being out of town, going to new places, I'm going to go to restaurants, I'm going to eat snacks. I don't restrict myself unless I have the ability to. So
Gotcha.
being at home and living a normal life, I can make my own meals. I don't have to eat snacks. I don't have to go have any drinks with friends. I can really control those things. And for me, it's just calories. I stay under my calorie goals and I get my steps in, I get my lifts in. So just when I'm out, it makes that a lot easier.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, basically what we talk about all the time, trying to just do what you can, being realistic, not being to the point where I'm never going to go on vacation, but just doing what you can when you have your, when you're able to control it.
Yeah, of course.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, in college, I never got diagnosed with a binge eating disorder, but I probably did have that. I would restrict. This is when I first started learning about nutrition and exercise and calories and counting macros and all that stuff. And I would be super, super strict during the week. I would do a ton of exercise. And then on the weekends, I would just go overboards and eat gobs and gobs. And of
Mhm.
food and ice cream and whatever it was. And then I would feel bad about it, feel that guilt and shame. And then over the years, I've just worked on realizing that like you can only control the things you can in each day, and to not hyper focus on each day and focus on everything as a whole over time. And as long as you build those habits and realize that everything from bulking to cutting, both of those things are going to take a lot of time. And the more you can focus on the big picture and then just controlling what you can and not being too, I don't know what to say, like, don't be too caught up
Mhm.
in your like mistakes or bad foods or whatever. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Kind of
think what you're saying
rambling.
is like pushing forward, like there's gonna be mistakes no matter like what kind of health journey you're on, but like try not to focus on it, but instead like pushing forward and just like focusing on the next day and focusing on what you can do,
Yeah.
improving a little bit each day.
Yeah, just about the habits and not beating yourself up too much if you have something that might be off limits or whatever.
Well, with our pop culture little piece today, I was like running out of so many ideas. So actually, Vanessa, who kind of works for us behind the scenes, she's like, a lot of people are talking about the Taylor Swift stuff, and I'm not a Swiftie. So I think I missed this, but I think it's pretty
Okay.
interesting. So the article is from the Everygirl, and I think that people are more so talking about it like on TikToks and Reels and Instagram and stuff. But as an actual article to link out if you're interested in reading more, it's from the Everygirl, and the title is How Taylor Swift Stays Fit Enough to Perform for 3 hours Straight. So this writer is more so just like speculating, I guess, from like previous things that Taylor has said on what she does. But I thought it's interesting because I feel like you never really think that like an entertainer or like a singer has to train themselves to be able to. And I don't know if you've seen those videos with the singers that have to like walk on a treadmill to practice like how to have like the steady breath, but they kind of
Yeah.
speculate that she might like dance for exercise. But I wanted to get like your 2 cents on like kind of like what were your initial thoughts about this? Like, do you feel like there is any strength training goes into celebrities have to do stuff like this? What did you think?
Some of the stuff in there makes a lot of sense. So it said that she went to a dance class a few times per week. She focused on some just general strength training for her whole body. And those two pieces. And then the other thing was kind of like you said, the walking and focusing on breath work. All of that ties into being able to sustain her performance on stage. So if you think about her concerts are what, like 3 hours long or so, you need to have the endurance to do that. So that's where she's going to get her walking, her jogging, and
Mm,
then focus on her breath. Doing that throughout the week is going to allow her to control her breath while on stage and just be in better shape. So think about the higher your overall fitness is, and then think about her performance is probably not the most strenuous thing that she does.
mm,
So if your training is more strenuous than your actual performance, then her performance is not going to be as hard. Does that make
oh,
sense?
mhm.
So when she's doing her training and she's pushing her breath and she's pushing her cardio, then when she's on stage, it's not going to be as difficult for her when she's actually doing what she needs to do. It's
Gotcha,
kind of
gotcha.
like the same thing, kind of like the same thing for professional athletes. Like their training is so much harder than the actual game, and it's so long throughout the year that when they get to the games, they're able to perform at such a high level.
Yeah, I think that kind of feeds into the next question I had, which was, I'm sure people will read this and then like think that they need to do all these things, but it's like, what's really applicable to us and those of us who aren't professional athletes or aren't like on a tour? Or can you speak to like the reason why why does training or exercise or cardio fitness like help in daily life? I'm thinking even like for parents who like run around with their kids, or I don't know, or is there anything that you feel like it helps if you are just like fit overall, I guess?
Just in general, the more fit you are, so if you're going on a hike or you're playing with your kids, you don't want to get hurt by bending over and picking up your kid. Or
Mhm.
like if you're doing yard work and yard work is the most exhausting thing in your week, then if you can increase your overall fitness, your overall strength, your overall cardio, that yard work's not going to be as hard and it's not going to beat you up as much.
Mm,
So just things like that. If you're getting beat up by things that are kind of what people used to do every day back in the 40s and 50s,
mhm,
then that's a good thing. You know what I mean? You should be
gotcha.
able to do those things without it beating up your body.
Okay, and then why is that? Like, if somebody's like, "Well, I don't care about that," like, why should they care?
I don't know if it's too harsh to say, but just like being a more productive member of society and just being a better person for your family and your friends. Like if you're so unhealthy that you or so unfit that you can't do things in your life that are enjoyable, or you just physically can't do things like yard work or going on a hike, then your quality of life is less than what it could be. You
Yeah,
know what
no,
I
I don't
mean?
think that's too harsh to say. I think that overall, speaking to like the overall reward of like, I mean, I have a lot of clients who like, especially all of my wonderful California clients that have like all these great hiking trails that they can't do
Yeah.
on the weekend if they're not in shape. And I think it can be limiting to your social life, or if you have kids and like you can't chase them if they're running across the street, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just good to know that like you can have a better life if you are a little bit more physically fit.
Yeah. So I think that just comes down to the overall quality of your life will be
Mhm.
significantly better if you are more fit.
We're highlighting a lot of protein information for you for the month of April, so I wanted to include an ad that can make protein intake easier for you. I'm talking about Kevin's Natural Foods. I'm really excited about this ad because it's a product that I already recommend to clients anyway. I reached out to see if we could get a discount code for you and an affiliate code for me, and they were all on board. So here we go. We're all about whole foods at The Millennial Nutritionist, as in food in their most natural form, and Kevin's Natural Foods really fit that criteria. They offer pasta meal kits, heat and eat sides like mashed cauliflower, and what I normally recommend to clients, they're refrigerated chicken entrees like Thai coconut and Korean barbecue chicken. These are great for weight loss because they are an easy protein source that you could buy from the store and take home and just heat up. I know that a lot of you struggle with having enough time to make those important high protein meals, so check out Kevin's Natural Foods to solve that problem. If you come home at the end of the day and you just really don't want to cook something from scratch, this could be a really easy thing to just pull out of the fridge, add a vegetable and maybe a whole grain to it, and that is good enough for your meal. Enjoy the rest of your evening and go to bed. You can find Kevin's Natural Foods at a lot of grocery stores, Whole Foods being one of them, but if you order online and use the code TMN at checkout, you'll receive 10% off your purchase, your first purchase. Basically why I want to bring you on today to talk about bulking. So I really don't have a program that lends itself to bulking, but a lot of clients that when I start telling them that it's time to start strength training, we need to get this metabolism up, we need to get some muscle mass on you, they start to get really worried that they're going to turn into like Mr. Olympia. So I just kind of
Yeah.
want you to like break it down of like basically how hard that is so people aren't afraid to start doing that. So let's start from the top of like, why is it even important to build more muscle mass or maintain muscle mass is a lot of our clients' goals for overall health.
There's a lot of things that can be unpacked in that.
Uh-huh.
But to start, I'd say for overall health, the more muscle you have, the higher metabolic rate it's going to be. So that means the more calories you're going to be able to eat. So if you think about a lot of people, probably a lot of your clients are on restricted diets,
Mhm.
and a lot of people in general who want to lose weight or change their physique usually have to eat a low calorie diet.
Mhm.
And that's hard to stick to long term, especially in the world we live in where everything is higher calorie and a lot of people don't exercise regularly. If you can build more muscle, then you're able to eat more food without putting on weight. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
So you think about a lot of lean people that have a lot of muscle, people will look at them and like, oh my gosh, you eat so much food, but you're so lean. How is that possible? Well, it's because they have more muscle and then they burn more calories at rest.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people like, it's like you want to build muscle because that way when you sit down on a couch, you're burning more calories as opposed to when you don't have as much muscle and you have to like do twice the work just to burn the same amount of calories. So it's kind of like a little hack if you think about it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you're saying it makes it mostly like easier overall to be able to lose weight. How can having increased muscle mass like help us in our daily lives? Like, are there any functions that it helps with?
The muscle, probably not itself, but in order to obtain muscle, you're probably going to gain strength, which is again going to tie into the overall better quality of life. So if you think of like carrying groceries
Mm,
or people that need your help with moving things around the house,
mm,
or say your friend is moving and they ask you to come help with moving, if you aren't strong enough to do that, then that's a decreased quality of life, in my opinion. You want to be able to help people. You also want to be sufficient and independent. So if you're stronger, you're going to be able to do those things and it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I feel like I hear this a lot with parents. I mean, I'm not a parent, so it doesn't come like first in mind to me, but I know a lot of clients, they want to start working with us because they feel like they can barely keep up with their kids. They can't chase them up the stairs. Kids are really active. And so they don't have the energy or even, yeah, like are able to hold them, stuff like that. So I think thinking about how muscles, what allows you to move throughout the day, you can increase your strength, you can move a little bit better and therefore like have a better quality of life is I feel like what you're saying too. Is that right?
There's also like the thought of when you're 60, 70, 80 years old, which a lot of people don't think about, but having more muscle and strength in your younger years significantly decreases your risk for like hip fractures or falls. And so the stronger you are, the better balance you're going to have. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're 60 or 70 and you want to get off the couch, or you just want to decrease your chance of breaking your leg, you need to be stronger and more fit in your younger years.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the most like common things is people don't think long term and what they can be doing for themselves right now in order to help themselves when they're older. It's like the same thing as investing.
A lot of times people forget that it's not just about aesthetics, but having more strength can really help you. I remember there's this one thing we learned in school, and I don't even remember the intricacies of it, but I remember my whole class was like, what in the world? Like something about how if like you do have a hip fracture, like your chances of dying go like way up because if you can't
Yep.
move around or like you're sedentary and you get an infection, you can't take care of yourself. And one way
Yep.
to prevent all that is just by, yeah, having more strength, having more cushion for when you fall, having something that can help you to not even have to fall too.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
what about muscle mass or strength? Can you tell me how do we build strength or muscle mass?
So there's a few components. Obviously, you have to strength train, and that's going to look different based off of where you're at. So if you have a 300-pound person who has not been working out, strength training for them might look like doing like a modified push up, doing modified squats, body weight squats, versus someone who's more advanced is going to need probably the weight room. You can still you can still build muscle and strength without weights, but weights are a very convenient and easy tool to continue building muscle and strength. So someone who's more advanced might be doing like heavy bench presses and squats versus that person that's 300 pounds and is just kind of starting their muscle building process. So that's the resistance training side. And then the other side is the diet. You want to eat about 300 to 500 calories above maintenance level. And if you're eating more than that, you're probably just going to pack on more fat mass, which is when people become like that bulky look, which is what
Mhm.
especially women don't want to have. And what they kind of think about when women think about bulky, they think about either like women bodybuilders or just like becoming super thick.
Mhm.
And the only way that you're going to do that is by an excessive amount of calories over time. So if you're eating around maintenance or just a little bit over maintenance, all that's going to happen to women is they look more toned and leaner
Mm.
instead of looking super like bodybuilding type look.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so I hear you saying that there's a combination of the strength training and nutrition tie into it. What if somebody like just tackles one of those? Can you still build muscle mass and strength or no, do both of those have to be there?
They both have to be there. So if you're resistance training and you're eating in a deficit, your body will lean out,
Mhm.
but it's not going to actually be building muscle mass. You have to have a surplus of calories in order for more muscle to be built on your body.
Mhm.
And if you're just overeating and you're not resistance training, then you physically can't grow muscles.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how people actually bulk. So can you talk about how long it takes? Just because I want to clarify with some clients, I mean, we only work with them through 3 months, but some of them do get afraid that if
Yeah.
they strength train for the whole 3 months, they're going to turn super bulky. So how long does it really take?
The research shows that The maximum rate of muscle growth is zero point 0.5 to 2 pounds. So 0.5 to 2 pounds of muscle per month. And that's if you're doing everything right, like
Mhm.
everything spot on. That means you're taking a lot of your sets to near failure or close to failure. That means that you're eating in a 300 to 500 calorie surplus every single day. You're maximizing your sleep, you're maximizing your recovery. Like it is super hard in the first place to do all that stuff. So very few people train hard enough to elicit maximum muscle growth,
Mm,
and very few people that are trying to seriously build muscle mass eat the amount that's required for them. So I work a lot with high school athletes,
mhm,
and most of them are trying to build muscle mass, but they have no clue how many calories that they really need to eat, and
mhm.
most of them don't eat the amount of calories needed to maximize their muscle growth. So back to the main question is zero point 0.5 to 2 pounds per muscle is the absolute most that you can gain per month, and anything above that, you're probably going to be gaining more fat than muscle anyways. So
Mm.
you want to take it slowly, and otherwise you're just going to gain more fat.
Okay. But for somebody to look like, a woman bodybuilder or like Mr. Olympia, like, how long does that take?
Oh my God. One, a lot of drugs, a lot of
Oh, really?
steroids. Two, like years, like
Okay.
minimum 6 years with
Mm,
drugs, and everything like I just mentioned has to be on point. Like
mm,
you have to be in a great calorie surplus. You have to be killing yourself in the gym probably.
mhm.
Like and if you even if you are training that hard for that long, it's going to be hard to recover from that unless you're on steroids. So most people don't understand how hard you have to train in order to really maximize your muscle growth. So I think very few people should worry about getting to that point. And the thing is, if you are training that hard and you do have your calories in check and your protein in check and your sleep's great, if you start to build muscle and lean out, you can just like pull back a little bit if you think
Mhm.
that you're getting too bulky. So that's the nice thing about it. Like my challenge would be to try and do that. Try and get to be that bodybuilding type shape and build as much muscle as you can. And if you really think that you're getting close to that, you can just stop or
And
just pull back a little bit.
what do you mean pull back from what? Like decrease the amount of weight you're lifting, decrease workouts in
Yeah.
general? What do you mean?
Yeah. So you would just decrease the intensity, decrease the amount of sets that you're going close to failure, and then bring your calories back a little bit and adjust your diet there.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so kinda like starve out the muscles. I hear you kinda what you're saying a little bit.
Yeah, kind of. And just kind of instead of shifting your focus towards maximum muscle building, you would just shift your focus more, less intensity in your workouts, keeping more reps in the tank. So think about if you're doing a set of 10 reps on bench press. If the most amount of weight you can lift for 10 reps is 100 pounds, then you would either do a little bit less weight, or you could do that 100 pounds, but just do like 6 reps instead of the 10.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. No, that makes sense because I do sometimes get clients who, like, are at a lower body weight and they're used to they're really disciplined, they've gotten down, but then they don't know what they're like, do they just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing, but they don't necessarily, like, wanna build more muscle, but it sounds like you can maybe just, like, pull back and, like, just maintain where you're at.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And then I do get some people sometimes who have come to me from other programs that sound like a little bit more like power lifty programs or something because they are sometimes worried. They're like, look, I've done this before and I just rapidly gain weight. Why do you feel like that would happen? To me, it kind of sounds like you're saying that you're probably like way overeating, or is there another reason you would just get like you said, like thick? I don't know if you mean like thick with two C's, like, like
Yeah.
big, big. How does that happen?
So that would definitely come from the diet aspect. For those people, I would really like to try to figure out kind of where their maintenance is, and then see how much they were actually eating when they were doing that program. Because if you're even for powerlifting, I've seen lots of powerlifters, even like every day when I go to the gym that I train at, but I also go to Lifetime,
Mhm.
and I'll see people at both gyms who do powerlifting, so like super heavy weight, but they're skinny and they're like they just have that thin, like dense muscle. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
you'll see people with that are kind of shredded, but they look strong versus people who are thick and they're just like kind of like think of an offensive lineman in football who are just big, big people, a little bit of excess fat, but they definitely look strong. So that's what I mean by thick.
Right.
So like thick versus toned, I guess is what you would call that.
Yeah.
But
And
that's going to come from the amount of food that people are eating.
okay, so you're saying that it might be an indication that you're eating an excess of calories if you
Yeah.
are getting like adding a little too much fat along with muscle and you don't want that look.
Yeah, exactly. So
Gotcha.
if you're gaining like 2 to 3 pounds or more per week, then a lot of that's going to be due to an excess amount of calories, and then your body is just holding on to more water from the excess amount of calories. So you would need to pull your calories back, and unless you're severely underweight and you need to put on weight.
Should someone be afraid that they will get bulky if they're starting a new strength training program? Because isn't there like that one like concept of newbies can like lose fat and gain muscle at the same time or something? Or is that like a myth?
People that are new to lifting are certainly predisposed to gaining muscle faster and losing fat faster. But again, you have to be doing everything like right on point in order for that to even have a chance of occurring. So
Mhm.
they're going to see strength gains faster. And a lot of that is not only due to them having a lower base level, but just your body getting used to a new movement, you're going to progress faster on it. And then eventually over time, you're going to slow down on that progress and you're going to have to figure out how to continue to progress. But the newbie gains is definitely real. And I see that all the time. Again, working with high schoolers,
Mhm.
when they start strength training, I mean, they get ripped, and but we are purposely doing that.
Mhm.
And again, if you're new to it and you feel like you're putting on too much muscle, which probably won't happen, you can just pull back the calories and pull back the intensity on your lifting. I'd say 99% of the time when I train women and they start to lift more, their body just gets smaller. Like it's a smaller
Mhm.
version of themselves
Okay.
because I'm not having them purposely eat like in a surplus. They
Mhm.
just continue to eat how they normally eat, or they just modify their protein intake. And the only thing that happens is their body gets like smaller and their muscles become a little more apparent. And they all like that look.
And can
So
you just say
even
again, why do you think that happens?
it's just a decrease of body fat and then an increase in muscle mass. Everyone's seen that the picture of the pound of body fat versus the pound of muscle. The muscle is smaller, they weigh the same, but the muscle is just denser. So it's the toned look is muscle in the absence of body fat.
Mm.
So even like yesterday, I was talking to a client. She's a 22-year-old girl. She's been training with me virtually for about 6 months now, and she said that she just bought a form-fitting dress for the first time in her life because she feels confident in wearing
Aw.
it. So it's like things like that where girls will just be their body will shrink
Mhm.
basically, and it'll become a little more toned, if you will.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, and that's the same thing I tell my clients, like, I didn't does you have to it doesn't just, like, happen on accident, like, you have to design a
Yeah,
program to help you to gain weight in both ways, and in our program, we're really mostly just focusing on, maintaining the muscle mass, so we're not just,
yeah,
like, having you be in a calorie deficit and then decrease the muscle, so we're really focusing
yeah,
on keeping what you have and then, like, leaning you out in the way that you would tell if you are getting too bulky would mean that we gave you too many calories, and I feel you kinda,
right,
like, saying the same thing. Is that what you're
right.
saying?
So, yeah, exactly. With your program, I think for women or really anybody who starts to take their strength training up a notch and
Mhm.
they start doing more intensity, a little more volume, their body is just going to shape up, if you
Mhm.
will.
Yeah.
Like everyone probably in your program will like the way they look if they just start to strength train a little more and follow your nutrition recommendations.
Why is it important to do the strength training? Like, why, like, I feel like, because a normal person probably might just think, like, okay, well, if I just want to lose fat, why wouldn't I just cut calories? Like, why do I also have to focus on the strength training part? Like, why do both of them need to be there if you do want to lose fat?
So there's the term skinny fat. So I don't know if I
Hmm.
mean, you've
Yeah, some
definitely heard of
clients say
skinny
that,
fat.
but they
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've probably talked to your clients about skinny fat, but basically if I'm this happened when I first lost weight. I was in high school. I was like 200 pounds, and all I did was start running more, and I
Hmm.
ate less. And I got smaller, but I still had body fat on me,
Hmm.
and I was basically just a smaller version of my fat self. Because I didn't build any muscle, so
Yeah.
I still had that loose skin. I still
Hmm.
had excess body fat, and I had no like muscle definition because I didn't have muscle to begin with or to show.
Yeah, and I think even for people that, like, don't care about that look, I think, again, it kinda goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning is, like, we want that function. Like, we can't just, like, try to be our smallest self because it's not very helpful. Like, you're gonna lose function if you don't also focus on preserving that muscle mass as you lose weight. So that's another thing that I just try to constantly tell clients. But I hear you saying, again, it's important because typically people wanna lose weight, wanna look a certain way that is like a motivator, and you're not really gonna get there if you're just focusing on the calorie deficit part. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Can you tell us the difference between toned, lean, and bulky? So I don't know if these are just words people use in marketing, but I do hear clients say they want
Yeah.
these things. And can you kind of just go through what they are to you?
Toned is often used as a marketing term for women. You'll see pretty much any women's like supplement company or apparel line talking about like the toned look and how to get toned, or this
Hmm.
supplement will help you get toned,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. But that toned look is literally just a lean, muscular physique with less body fat.
Mm.
So if you think of like a lot of female athletes have that toned look, but it's just because they have less body fat and they have more muscle. And then you think of like the 175-pound like ripped dude on the beach. They they're lean and they're toned, but that's because they don't have a lot of body fat on them and they're at a
Hmm.
good body weight for their size. And then bulky would be muscular, but also having a fair amount of body fat on them, which is just going to make them look thicker and more dense in general.
Yeah. And I like what you're saying about thinking about that like football player because I feel like that, I don't know why that's like a needed body shape, but like they're
Yeah.
still strong, but we've also have a layer of body fat as opposed to the toned and lean would be just like muscle, but less body fat. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then what can somebody do again to avoid getting too bulky? They're like, we've sold them. They're like, okay, I want to start strength training, but I'm still just like really afraid of getting bulky, getting at a larger size than I am now. What can they do to avoid that?
As long as your diet and your calories are in check, you're not going to get bulky. So even if you are training really hard and you're lifting to build muscle, if your calories are in the right place and you're not overeating, you're not going to get bulky. Like it's impossible. The only
Hmm.
thing that's going to happen in that scenario is you're going to look leaner, you're going to lose body fat, which is what most people want. So, like if you combine a good strength training program and your program and your nutrition intervention, the only thing that's going to happen is the person's going to lose body fat and they're going to gain muscle, like a little bit of muscle and strength. If they feel like they're looking bigger and they're gaining weight for some reason, then you can either pull back on the strength training or you can modify your calories.
So are you saying that you essentially do the same strength training regimen if you're trying to bulk versus maintain, but the nutrition is the only thing that changes? Or no, there is a different way of training if you're trying to bulk versus just like lean out?
In general, you could technically have the same exact program, as long as you're modifying your calories. So,
Mhm.
for example, from November to the end of January, my goal was to put on some weight and build as much muscle as possible and maximize that 0.5 to 2 grams per pound per month, which is what we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
And so I was eating in a surplus, and my training then looks very similar to how my training is now, but I'm eating in a slight deficit,
Mhm.
and my body has only lost fat and appears leaner. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and can you feel that? Like, can you feel that it's like it's harder for you to progress in your weights if you're like trying to cut or tone, or no, you still feel like you get strong?
So it depends on, I mean, that depends on a few factors. That depends on your programming,
Mm.
and it depends on the amount of the deficit that you're in. So if I'm in a bigger deficit, say I am eating in a 500 to a 1,000 calorie deficit, my strength is definitely going to go down because I'm not giving my body the amount of calories it needs to perform at its highest level. But if I'm only eating a small deficit, like 200 to 400 calories, I'm still progressing on my weights. It's just not as drastic as it would be versus if I was bulking and I was in a surplus in my calories. Because when I was bulking, my reps or my weight was going up almost every week because I was literally overfeeding my body and giving it the maximum amount of calories it needs to perform at its best. But now, since I'm not intaking the amount of calories it needs to even maintain its weight, it's hard to progress in weight in the gym.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like I'm a testament to that too. A long time ago, I tried to bulk because I was like, I'm gonna just see what this is about. It sounds fun to be able to eat like 3,000 calories a day.
Yeah,
But I
it
felt like it
is.
was a lot easier to like increase the weights I lifted every time. And now
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm never gonna do that again. I don't think that's me. So, but I
yeah,
feel like it is harder to like constantly say, okay, Isla, let's go up like 5 pounds today. And so I feel like that could be like another indication for somebody like that if you feel like, you might be on a bulking route if you are like easily going up in weights all the time.
so if you are constantly going in weight, up in weight in the gym, you could either be eating too much or you could have just been holding back to
Mm,
begin with. You know what I mean?
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I did get one audience question that I think is a really good question that came in is what counts as effective strength training besides weightlifting? So is this even a valid question? What is your answer to this?
This can also, it just depends on where that person's at. So like I said
Mm,
earlier, you could have the 300-pound person where doing modified push-ups is going to be enough strain for them to count as like resistance training versus someone who's advanced and already in really good shape. If they're doing modified push-ups, then that's not going to be a sufficient stimulus to progress in strength or muscle.
mm,
So if you're in decent shape and say the most amount of push-ups you can do is 40, in order to continue to progress and strengthen muscle, you would have to do multiple sets of 40, or you would need to try to push that 40 to like 45 or 50.
mm, mhm,
So that's where strength training, traditional strength training, going in the gym is nice because you have multiple. It gives you a lot more tools. So you have dumbbells, you have barbells, you have machines, and if you focus on progressing all of those, that's going to be easier than just trying to progress your push-ups or the amount of lunges you do. So say like you do 200 lunges, that could kill some people, not kill, like that could destroy their legs. And but for some people who are more fit, that won't be enough for them. You know what I mean? So
mhm.
it kind of depends on where you're at in the spectrum, and then just making sure that if you're trying to build muscle and strength, you have to really push that intensity. And a lot of people don't even know where that point is for them.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what I tell clients because a lot of people don't even know what strength training is and marketing is crazy. So
Yeah.
a lot of people think that Pilates is good or that yoga is good or that moving or hiking. And my answers are only like, oh, if you're just starting out, it's probably good. But if you can't continually continue to like increase something when you're doing that, it's probably not strength training anymore. So you feel like that's like what you're saying too, or is there another recommendation should be saying
Yeah.
instead?
No, that's very accurate. And I think if you just think about the scalability of an exercise, instead of doing things that just like burn the muscle,
Hmm.
um, you need to try to pick exercises where you have a quantifiable amount. So instead of just doing a bunch of kickbacks or like band work where like yeah it burns, but the only way to know if you're progressing is by if the weight is going up or if you're doing more reps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's
So
a good way to put
basically,
it.
yeah, like the intensity part is super important. If you take a runner, for example, if they're running a mile in 8 minutes, the only way to know if they're better is by running a mile in less than 8 minutes,
Hmm.
right? If you can only do 10 push-ups, the only way to know if you're stronger is doing more than 10 push-ups.
Yeah. So I hear you saying that just because it's burning your muscle doesn't necessarily mean it's strength training. Is that like what you're saying?
Correct. The only way that's an effective strength training is if you're able to do more reps or more weight or a combination of the two. Or if you're like a runner, then your time is coming down.
Okay, awesome. To wrap things up, do you have one or two actionable tips that somebody can take away from all of this information? Like now they're inspired, they're like, okay, you've sold me. I'm going to start strength training. I know I'm not going to get bulky. What is like one actionable thing that they can do with all this information?
I'll give you a few. The first thing I'd say is to make sure that you're still using correct technique. So if you're someone who hears this and you're like, oh, intensity, I'm going to go start pushing myself way more.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sacrifice your form for the amount of weight you can do or the amount of reps you can do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing a set of 12 on an exercise and you get to 10, but your form is getting super sloppy and you're increasing your chance for injury, then you want to stop there and count your set at 10 instead
Mm-hmm.
of pushing it to 12 and actually hurting yourself. Just be cautious of your intensity, depending on where you're at and your ability to perform certain exercises. The second one would be kind of that challenge that I said earlier. I would challenge a lot of the listeners to go and try and put on as much muscle as possible because the odds of you doing that are very small. And if you do start to put on too much muscle or you become too lean, then you can just pull back the intensity and adjust from there. And you'll probably be in a spot where you enjoy anyways. So just a little challenge.
Yeah, I like that. It's like flipping the mindset on its head of like, instead of trying to be like the smallest thing we possibly can be, let's focus on just gaining muscle and then see where that gets you because it'll probably have better benefits in the long term. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Not only will you'll probably like the way you look, but your functionality is going to be higher, and your cardiovascular fitness is going to be better. I think you're just going to have a better overall quality of life, and you'll be surprised at how fit you can get. A lot of people limit themselves by just trying to be as small as possible.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So true. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Tyler. If people are wanting to reach out to you, where can they find you at or how can they get in contact with you?
Talked in the last episode, Revival Fitness underscore RVF. And
Hmm.
then you could also go to revivalfitness.fit@gmail.com. And that's where I am posting a lot of my content about either fat loss or muscle building or mindset in general. And then that's where I offer online coaching and programming for whatever goals people have.
Great. Well, make sure to rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. I'm going to start plugging this point of action in so we can really reach other people who need us. We're getting a lot of traction from people finding us from the podcast and then following us on everything else, which is great. So just make sure to give us a little bump up for free by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us so we can just, again, reach more people who need us. But thank you so much for joining us today, Tyler.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to the Millennial Nutritionist Podcast. For daily weight loss tips and nutrition information, you can find us on Instagram at the.millennial.nutritionist and on TikTok at millennial.nutritionist. If you find this information helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend who needs encouragement on their health journey. See you in the next episode.